All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining. This is the second session. So in the last session, we read the prompt, we familiarized ourselves with the data set. Now we're going to actually start looking at some questions on the prompt and trying to answer them. So let me share my screen. Okay, so here's the prompt. We already read through it once, which is good. Now we're just going to focus on the output file. So let's see. So there's a few things we want to show here. So show any unique calculations or cuts of data that you think are worth highlighting as it relates to segment level analysis, rep performance, cohorted analysis, and risk or opportunity. So in this video, we're going to focus on the first two, so segment level analysis and rep performance. Great, so let's go back to our data set here. And yeah, so this is great. So for one thing we didn't do actually last time that I thought would be good to do is just look at how many rows just to get a sense. Okay, so 910 rows, so it's not a huge data set, so that's good to know. And yeah, so the first thing we want to look at here is segment analysis. So let's pivot the data, start a pivot table, let's do a new sheet. You can either do pivots or formulas. I like pivots, especially when you're just like exploring the data. I think it's really nice. If formulas allow you to add a little bit more customization. So if we need to do that, we can do formulas instead of pivots. But for now, I think pivots is a great idea. So yeah, let's do some segment analysis here. So the values, I wanted to use that ARR amount. And then rows, I'll put in the account segment. Now let's actually split it by fiscal period. And in our first video, remember that the fiscal period is based on the close date. And we found that out by on the filter here. Fiscal period, there's two fiscal periods, Q4 2019 to Q1 to 2020. And then we look at the close dates. It goes from November 1st through the end of April. So that tells me that the Q1 is November 1st, December, and January. And Q4 would be November 1st, December, January, and then Q1 would be February, March, and April. Okay, great. So here we are, fiscal period split out. Format here, make it dollars. Cool. So let's see. One thing I'm noticing right off the bat is they have Q1 2020 before Q4 2019. So maybe just to make it a little bit easier to read, we can switch the order of that. So now it's Q4 2019 first. Okay, great. And now let's add in a growth formula here. So we're interested in the growth between quarters across the different segments. So let's see. So it's new minus old divided by old. So yeah, unknown is probably going to look weird because it's not too much dollar value in that. Okay, great. So now we have the growth by each segment. This is interesting. So at our first cut, I like keeping it very high level like this. This might even be its own slide. We can call out, what the biggest segments are. It looks like strategic is the largest, followed by enterprise. Enterprise, SMB, and mid-market all about similar. So strategic, I'd call it as a growth area or strength. But yeah, this is actually really informative just by itself. The next interesting cut we could do is this is based on close date. I think another interesting cut would be based on created date. So let's go back to our data set. And now this is something that's actually really important with these exercises in general, just getting the dates correct. So as we called out, the fiscal period is related to close date, but created date is not basically been formatted to be by fiscal quarter yet. So we're going to do that right now. So we can compare apples to apples. So the first thing we do is to call it fiscal year, fiscal quarter. Whenever I add new fields to a data set, I like to highlight them in a different color, just so I know that they're my columns and they didn't come with the original data set. Okay, great. So I have a formula here that we can use for fiscal quarter, and I can walk you guys through what it shows. Basically, it looks at the created date. Let's format it to be a number. Okay, cool. So it looks at the created date, and it basically looks at the month value. So this would be 8. And then it chooses, based on that value, it'll return back a one of these values. So we know first month would be January. We know that's actually Q4. And then the fiscal year starts on February 1st. So February 1st, March, April are all would all be Q1. And then May 1st would be Q2, June Q2, July Q2, August, September, October would all be Q3, and then November and December would also be Q4. So we can just look at how it works. So we know this is August 8th, or we know that's in August. We know 8, yeah, we know that should be Q3, and that's what it returns here. So that's great. And now we can copy this formula down. So cool, now we have the fiscal quarter. For fiscal year, I think honestly the easiest way to do this would just be to manually filter. So we know everything up until January January 31st is 2019, fiscal year 2019. So we can actually just uncheck everything here. Okay, great. So this goes up to 2020. So this is all the remaining values would be 2019. Just actually just copy that all down. And then we can look at the blanks. Select all here. Just look at the blanks in fiscal year, and that would be all 2020. All right, and now let's do fiscal year and then fiscal quarter. And then you can call out here. And let's do concatenate 2019, and actually we can do a little underscore, and then we'll do the fiscal quarter. Great. So now we have fiscal year and fiscal quarter together. Let's copy that down. Awesome. Cool. So now we have a fiscal year, fiscal quarter, fiscal year, fiscal quarter. We can actually just even call it create date, so we know. So let's put CD, CD, and then CD. Great. And let's go back to our pivot table. So we can actually just make a new pivot here. And since we created the fields in the middle of the data set, they'll automatically be included in this pivot. So let's see here. Let's get rid of fiscal period. And now let's just get that concatenated value here. 2019. Okay, so it looks like Q1. What is underscore 1? Go back here. Interesting. Okay, so let's see what's going on with this value. Fiscal year. So these should all be 2020. For some reason that didn't pick up in our initial. We filtered for blanks. Let's see. Blanks. These are all, yeah, they all look like post 2/1/2020. So these should all be 2020. Great. So we got that. Now let's go back to our pivot. And one thing with our pivots I like to do is label them so we can very easily know what is inside them. And what we can also do is add a header here. So this would be fiscal period. Sorry, this would be ARR closed quarter. This would be ARR by created quarter and segments. That here. Segment, great. Great, so this is interesting. We'll make these all formatted the same way. Get rid of the decimals. Okay, cool. Great. Yeah, so this is our table that shows the ARR broken out by created date and by account segment. So I'm not actually going to do a lot with this at the moment. I think it's just interesting to have this table by itself, and we can actually include this in our segment analysis slide just by itself. And then we get into the trending and forecasting portion of the prompt. We can use actually these two tables combined and see of the ARR that closed, when was it created? For example, was it created 1 quarter before, 2 quarters before, to give us a sense of how much is going to close in the future. But yeah, this is great for now. The next thing I want to do is rep performance. So we're going to touch on it in this video, and then we're going to finish it up in the next video. But this tab, I already kind of made this before the video, but this shows of the number of accounts here, and then the number of reps here, both by segment. And I use this count a function, which only counts unique, which is great. That's what we want. And then we can see here, I basically just pulled the number of accounts by rep to match up with the corresponding segment. So there's 457 enterprise reps with 208 enterprise accounts. And then we do a simple division here. The number of reps divided by the number of accounts. And we see enterprise on average is about 2 reps per account. Mid-market is about 1.25. Then SMB is about 0.67, which intuitively we know makes sense. As the account size gets smaller, we would expect less reps to be assigned to these accounts because there's just generally more accounts as the accounts get smaller. Great. So yeah, this is our initial kind of dive into the rep performance. We'll touch on it more in the next video. But yeah, thank you for listening. Bye.